He didn't raise his voice. He didn't knock anything over. He didn't ask a question or demand an explanation. Adrian Liang was not a man who needed theatrics to be understood. He walked toward me, placed the gun on my desk, and said my name. Not Miss Carter. Not assistant. Not the name printed on contracts and access logs and internal documents. Just Isla. Quiet. Controlled. Almost intimate. The sound the gun made when it touched the glass surface was soft, precise. A dull tap, as though even violence had learned to behave in his presence. The weight of it seemed to radiate outward, pressing into the room, into my chest, into the space behind my eyes. Everything stopped. I felt it before I saw it, the sudden stillness, the way the air tightened. The men stationed near the elevators froze mid-motion, 1 foot half-raised, a hand suspended near a cufflink. No one moved. No one spoke. No one breathed. And in that moment, with a weapon resting inches from my hands and Adrian Liang standing far too close, I understood something far more frightening than the gun itself. The most dangerous man in Hong Kong wasn't angry. He was jealous. And whatever he had just learned about me meant someone was already dead, or soon would be. My desk sat directly outside Adrian's office on the 43rd floor. It was intentionally bare. Glass. Steel. Nothing personal. No photographs. No mementos. I had learned early that personal details were liabilities in this building. Anything that revealed attachment could be used as leverage. Behind me, the windows stretched from floor to ceiling, framing Victoria Harbour in fractured reflections of white and gold. The city pulsed below us, alive and indifferent, unaware of the power concentrated in this tower or the decisions made behind its glass walls. Adrian liked the view. Men like him always did. It was easier to feel untouchable when you could look down and see how small everything else was. I had been reviewing shipment schedules when the elevator chimed. I remember because I had circled a discrepancy twice, debating whether to flag it immediately or investigate quietly first. Quiet investigation was safer. Loud mistakes didn't survive long here. The elevator doors opened. Something felt wrong instantly. I didn't look up. I didn't need to. You learned rhythms in a place like this. Footsteps mattered. Pace mattered. Weight mattered. These were wrong. Too fast. Too heavy. Too deliberate. Adrian Liang crossed the floor toward me with his jacket still on, tie loosened just enough to suggest distraction rather than carelessness. His expression was composed, but his eyes were stripped bare, dark in a way I had never seen before. 2 of his men followed a step behind him, silent and alert, hands hovering close enough to their weapons to remind anyone watching that this was not an ordinary office. Adrian stopped at my desk. He didn't sit. He didn't speak. For half a second, my mind searched for explanations. A deal gone wrong. A security breach. An attack somewhere else that had sent him here in a controlled rage. Fear doesn't care about logic, it cares about survival. Then he reached inside his jacket. My breath caught. The gun appeared in his hand, dark and unadorned except for the carving along the grip. He placed it carefully on my desk, aligning it neatly, the barrel angled away from me but close enough that its presence was unmistakable. My heart slammed violently against my ribs. He leaned down until his mouth was near my ear, his breath warm against my skin. Why was your name on his gun, Isla? I didn't flinch. That alone took everything I had. I had learned long ago how to remain still when fear tried to take control. Silence had been my first language. Observation my second. I knew how to disappear while remaining useful. I don't understand, I said calmly. The words sounded steady. Professional. Controlled. His eyes flicked briefly to my mouth, as though noting the movement, memorizing it. You will, he said. He straightened and turned toward his office. Inside. Now. The glass walls darkened as we entered, responding to his biometric signal. The hallway vanished behind tinted opacity. His men remained outside, standing guard like sentinels. The door closed with a quiet click that felt far too final. The gun stayed on the desk between us. Adrian didn't sit. He stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the city like he wasn't about to dismantle my life piece by piece. "Explain," he said. I swallowed once. "I've never held a gun in my life," I said. "And I don't know anyone who would put my name on one." Silence stretched. Heavy. Intentional. Adrian turned slowly, his gaze sharp enough to cut. "He carved it," he said. My breath caught. "Carved your name into the grip," he continued. Slowly. Deliberately. Like a promise. Cold slid down my spine. "Who?" I asked. His jaw tightened just enough to be noticeable. Someone who should have known better. The name rose instantly, unwelcome and unavoidable. Ethan Cole. The past I had buried. The mistake I never spoke about. The reason I ran. And as Adrian Liang stood there, holding the proof that my past had found me anyway, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This moment had been waiting for me far longer than I realized. I nodded once, slowly, because any sudden movement felt like it might snap something fragile in the room. Adrian watched me the way a predator watches a door it knows prey will eventually try to run through. I crossed to the chair opposite his desk and sat. The gun remained between us, an accusation made of metal instead of words. I forced myself not to look at it again. Looking would give it power. "You deserve context," I said. "But I need you to understand something first." Adrian tilted his head slightly, a silent permission. "I didn't bring this into your world," I continued. "I ran from it. I did everything right." A humorless smile ghosted across his lips. "No one who ends up here did everything right," he said. "They just did enough." The words stung because they were true. So I told him. Not the polished version. Not the professional summary. I told him about the house I grew up in, about silence and observation and learning how to survive by becoming necessary but forgettable. I told him about Daniel, how earnest he was, how deeply he believed in the idea that systems worked if you respected them. Adrian listened without interrupting. He didn't move. His stillness felt heavier than any outburst. I told him about Ethan. About the way he slid into our lives like he belonged there. About his charm, his intelligence, his dangerous ease. About how he made Daniel feel braver and made me feel exposed. I told him about the night Daniel stopped answering his phone. When I finished, the room felt smaller. As if the walls had crept closer while I wasn't paying attention. "Daniel didn't die because he was reckless," Adrian said quietly. "He died because he believed rules mattered." "Yes," I replied. "And Ethan knew exactly how to use that." "And you?" Adrian asked. "What did he use on you?" I met his gaze. "Fear," I said. "And affection. And the lie that protection is the same thing as control." Something dark flickered behind Adrian's eyes. "When did you leave?" he asked. 2 weeks after the funeral." "Without telling him?" "Yes." "Did he follow?" "Not right away. But eventually." "Yes." Adrian exhaled slowly through his nose. "He didn't carve your name because he loved you," he said. "He carved it because he believed you belonged to him. That even in death, he could mark you." The idea made my skin crawl. "I don't belong to anyone," I said. His gaze snapped back to mine. "I know," he replied. "That's why this concerns me." The weight of that statement settled deep. "You're not afraid of him," I said slowly. "You're afraid of what his death represents." Adrian didn't deny it. "Ethan Cole was not a leader," he said. "He was an intermediary. A courier of influence. Men like him don't die unless someone above them allows it. So whoever killed him did it knowing I'd be implicated," I said. "Yes. And they wanted your attention." "Yes." I leaned back in my chair, forcing myself to think instead of react. Panic never solved anything. Strategy did. "They're testing you," I said. "Seeing how you'll respond." Adrian's mouth curved slightly. "They already know," he said. I respond decisively. That was the moment I realized something else. This wasn't just about my past colliding with his world. It was about two systems of power intersecting. And I was standing at the center. "You should move," Adrian said abruptly. "Where?" "Somewhere secure. Somewhere controlled." I shook my head. "That would confirm their leverage." His eyes narrowed. "You're not expendable," he said. "I know," I replied. "And that's exactly the problem." Silence again. Different this time. Sharper. "You trust me with your operations," I said carefully. "With sensitive data. With decisions that affect millions of dollars." "Yes." "Then trust me with this." Adrian studied me for a long moment, as if recalibrating something internal. "What do you propose?" he asked. "We don't hide," I said. "We don't move me or make this dramatic. We let them believe they haven't rattled us. And we find out who benefits most from Ethan's death." A slow smile spread across Adrian's face. "Not warm. Not kind. Predatory." "Good," he said. "I was hoping you'd say that." The days that followed were deceptively normal. Too normal. Shipments moved. Meetings were held. Contracts were signed. On the surface, Liang International Holdings continued its immaculate performance. But beneath it, the machinery shifted. I worked longer hours, not because Adrian demanded it, but because he allowed it. He brought me into rooms I'd never been invited into before. Discussions that weren't supposed to exist. Names that never appeared on paper. "You see patterns," he said one night, sliding a tablet across the desk. "Tell me what you see." Money laundering was never loud. It whispered through logistics, hid inside inefficiencies, masked itself as coincidence. But once you learned how to read it, it was unmistakable. "This is the same structure Daniel found," I said quietly. Layered routing. Clean companies acting as buffers. The same ports. The same intermediaries. "Names?" Adrian asked. I hesitated. "Some of them are dead," I said. "Others are protected." "Protection is temporary," he replied. Something shifted between us in those late nights. Trust, forged under pressure. And something else. Unspoken. Dangerous. Magnetic. Adrian never touched me at work. Never crossed a line. But his presence lingered. His gaze followed me longer than necessary. His questions became more personal, more curious. One night, after a 12-hour stretch that left both of us exhausted, the facade cracked. We were alone in his office, city lights pulsing beyond the glass. He loosened his tie and leaned against the desk, watching me with an intensity that made my breath hitch. "You don't sleep," he said. "I do," I replied. "Eventually." "When?" "When it's safe." A pause. "It will never be safe," he said. I looked at him then, really looked. "I know," I said. "That's why I learned how to stay awake." He crossed the distance between us in 3 measured steps. "You shouldn't have had to," he said. The words were quiet. Genuine. That was when he kissed me. Not rushed. Not desperate. Controlled, restrained, as if he was testing himself as much as me. I didn't pull away. After that, everything accelerated. The message came a week later. Not to me. To Adrian. A photograph appeared in his encrypted inbox. It was me. Leaving the building. Walking alone. Unaware. Underneath it, 3 words. "She remembers everything." Adrian showed it to me without comment. "They're wrong," I said. "But they're scared." "Good," he replied. "Fear makes people sloppy." The counterattack was quiet and devastating. Adrian froze assets that didn't officially belong to him. Delayed shipments just long enough to cause panic. Allowed rumors to circulate unchecked. Allies turned on each other, desperate to protect themselves. I followed Daniel's old trails, picking up where he'd been forced to stop. The name surfaced again and again. Marcus Hale. The man who signed off on Daniel's termination. The man who'd financed Ethan. The man who believed distance made him untouchable. He won't come for me directly, I said. He'll try to use me. Adrian's expression darkened. He won't get the chance, he said. But Marcus Hale was patient. He invited me to lunch. Public place. Busy restaurant. A move designed to appear harmless. I accepted. Marcus was older than I expected. Polished. Unassuming. The kind of man people trusted without knowing why. You look well, he said pleasantly. Hong Kong suits you. You murdered my brother, I replied. He smiled faintly. I removed an inconvenience, he said. Daniel didn't understand the scale of what he was interfering with. And Ethan? I asked. Ethan misunderstood his place. And me? Marcus's gaze sharpened. You were collateral, he said. But now you're a symbol. And symbols are dangerous. I'm not afraid of you, I said. You should be, he replied. Adrian Liang cannot protect you from everything. I leaned forward. He doesn't need to, I said. You already lost. Marcus laughed softly. We'll see. He was arrested 3 weeks later. Not publicly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Charges surfaced. Evidence appeared. Allies vanished. By the time the world noticed, Marcus Hale was finished. The gun returned to the safe. My name was sanded off. Months passed. Adrian and I stood openly together now. Not announced. Not hidden. Claimed. On a night when the city felt unusually calm, Adrian took my hand on the balcony overlooking the harbor. Stay, he said. Not because you need me. But because you want this life. I looked at the city below, at the world that had tried to claim me and failed. I choose you, I said. And for the first time in my life, it felt like the past had finally loosened its grip. The city did not change just because my life had. It still pulsed below us, restless and bright, an endless network of movement and ambition and secrets layered so deeply that even the people who ran it rarely understood the full shape of what they controlled. Hong Kong never slowed down for personal revelations or quiet promises. It only watched to see who would keep up. Adrian's hand remained warm around mine long after the words had been spoken. The choice had been made. Not dramatically. Not impulsively. It settled between us with the weight of inevitability, like something that had been waiting to happen long before either of us named it. We didn't rush anything after that. That surprised me. Men like Adrian Liang were accustomed to taking what they wanted decisively, efficiently, without hesitation. But with me, he moved carefully, as though he understood that what he was holding wasn't fragile, but precise. Something that required respect rather than force. We learned each other in the margins of long days and quieter nights. In shared silence over paperwork and strategy sessions that bled into early mornings. In the way he always stood between me and the door without making it obvious. In the way I noticed when his breathing changed before difficult meetings, how his jaw tightened just enough to warn me that something wasn't right. I didn't ask about his past. Not at first. Power left scars. I understood that instinctively. Whatever had shaped Adrian into the man he was now hadn't done so gently. And some histories demanded patience before they revealed themselves. The threats didn't stop immediately. They never did. But they grew less confident. Less coordinated. Messages that once felt deliberate began to feel reactive. Men who once operated with precision started making mistakes. Fear had shifted. It was no longer aimed at me. It was aimed at him. That realization came with its own weight. I was no longer the hunted thing in someone else's story. I was part of the force that rewrote endings. You're thinking too loudly, Adrian said one night, glancing up from his desk. I hadn't realized I'd stopped working. Just connecting dots, I replied. Anything I should be worried about? Yes, I said. But not the way you think. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. They're not going to come at you again, I continued. Not directly. They've learned that doesn't work. And you believe this because, he prompted. Because they're already trying something else. A beat. Explain. They're going after perception, I said. Undermining legitimacy. Whispering where they can't strike. They'll try to fracture alliances. Create doubt. Make people question whether standing beside you is worth the risk. Adrian smiled faintly. Let them try. That confidence, I said, is exactly what they'll exploit if we're not careful. His gaze sharpened. So what do you suggest? We get ahead of it, I said. We stop reacting and start shaping the narrative. How? I slid a document across the desk. We go public. His brow lifted slightly. Selective transparency, I clarified. Controlled exposure. You clean house in a way no one expects. Sacrifice minor assets to protect the core. Show restraint where they expect brutality. You want me to appear vulnerable, he said. I want you to appear human, I corrected. Untouchable men make people nervous. Men who acknowledge risk inspire loyalty. Adrian studied the document in silence. You're dangerous, he said finally. I learned from the best, I replied. The plan worked better than even I expected. Adrian announced internal restructuring. Quietly removed several figures who'd been liabilities for years. Allowed rumors of internal conflict to surface, only to resolve them with decisive calm. He turned potential weakness into proof of control. The whispers lost traction. By the time anyone realized what he'd done, it was too late to reverse. That was when the invitations started coming. Events. Galas. Private dinners. Rooms where decisions were made behind smiles and clinking glasses. Adrian took me with him everywhere, not as an accessory, but as a presence. She sees what others miss, he told people. Listen when she speaks. They did. Some reluctantly. Some eagerly. All of them eventually. I learned quickly who underestimated me and who feared me. Who saw me as leverage and who recognized me as something far more dangerous. One evening, after a particularly tense dinner with a consortium that had once backed Marcus Hale, Adrian and I returned to the penthouse later than usual. The city was unusually quiet, rain softening the edges of sound and light. He poured us each a drink and handed me mine without comment. You handled them well, he said. They wanted reassurance, I replied. Not strength. That's the mistake people make. And you? He asked. What do you want? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? He turned toward me fully, his expression unreadable. You've built a life here, he said. You've gained influence. Stability. Power. You could take that anywhere now. I met his gaze. I don't want anywhere, I said. I want here. His eyes softened just slightly. With me? He asked. Yes. The word felt solid. Unwavering. That was the night he told me about his father. A man who'd built an empire through precision and fear, who'd taught Adrian that mercy was a liability and attachment a weakness. A man who'd been admired publicly and ruthless privately. A man Adrian had spent years learning how not to become. He taught me how to survive, Adrian said quietly. Not how to live. I reached for his hand. You chose a different ending, I said. So did you, he replied. The past never vanished entirely. It lingered in small ways. A name resurfacing briefly before disappearing again. A familiar structure showing up where it didn't belong. A reminder that power was never static. But it no longer owned me. I owned it. One morning, nearly a year after the gun had appeared on my desk, I arrived at work to find the office buzzing with a restrained energy. Adrian stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, his posture rigid. He ended the call and turned to me. It's over, he said. I didn't need clarification. They've dismantled what's left, he continued. Arrests in 3 countries. Assets seized. No intermediaries left standing. I exhaled slowly, a tension I hadn't realized I was still holding finally releasing. Daniel's name would never be cleared publicly. The world rarely acknowledged the quiet dead. But justice didn't always need an audience. Sometimes it just needed an ending. That evening, Adrian brought me back to the balcony overlooking the harbor. The city glittered beneath us, vast and alive. He took my hand and pressed something cool into my palm. A ring. Simple. Elegant. Unassuming. This isn't ownership, he said quietly. This is partnership. Equal. Chosen. I looked at him, at the man who had seen my past and not turned away. Who had offered power without demanding surrender. Yes, I said. Below us, the city breathed on, unaware that something subtle but permanent had shifted above it. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the past to catch up. I was already where I belonged. Time did what it always did. It moved forward without asking permission. The ring did not change how Adrian looked at me in public, but it altered the way the world responded once people noticed it. Power recalibrates itself around symbols, and commitment is one of the most dangerous symbols of all. It told people where lines had been drawn. It told them where influence pulled. It warned them that certain calculations would now come with consequences. I did not stop working. If anything, I worked harder. There was comfort in structure, in systems that obeyed logic. Emotion had its place, but I had learned long ago that it could not be trusted to keep you alive on its own. Adrian understood that without my having to explain it. He never asked me to step back or soften my edges. He never tried to reshape me into something decorative or less threatening. That was part of why I stayed. The days fell into a rhythm that felt almost peaceful. Meetings, negotiations, travel. Long flights where the cabin lights dimmed and the world narrowed to the quiet hum of engines and the weight of Adrian's shoulder beside mine. Nights where exhaustion gave way to conversations that wandered into philosophy, strategy, and the occasional memory neither of us had meant to share. Sometimes I caught him watching me with an expression that felt unguarded, as if he were still surprised that I was there by choice. Other times, I watched him carry the burden of his empire with a restraint that bordered on loneliness. Power isolates. Love, when it is real, does not. I thought the worst was behind us. That was my mistake. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. No threats. No warnings. No sense of impending disaster. I was reviewing port traffic data when my screen flickered once, then froze. The systems around me stalled in sequence, like dominoes falling in deliberate order. Phones stopped ringing. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Adrian was on his feet instantly. Lockdown, he said calmly. The building responded at once. Security shutters descended. Elevators froze. The office became a sealed environment of controlled stillness. I didn't panic. Panic wastes time. This isn't external, I said, already scanning secondary systems. It's coming from inside. Adrian's gaze sharpened. Meaning? Meaning someone has access they shouldn't, I replied. And they planned this. The lights dimmed briefly, then stabilized. Backup power engaged smoothly. Whoever had initiated the breach hadn't intended to cause chaos. They'd intended to isolate us. A message appeared on my screen. One line. No signature. You buried the wrong past. My pulse quickened, but my hands remained steady. They're testing again, I said. But this time it's not about fear. Adrian moved closer, reading over my shoulder. It's about pride, he said. Someone wants recognition. Or revenge, I added. We worked in silence, fingers flying across interfaces, rerouting access, tracing permissions. The intruder was skilled. Not reckless. They moved like someone who understood how systems breathed. This isn't Marcus Hale, Adrian said quietly. This is someone new. No, I replied. This is someone old. I followed a trail that felt too familiar. A logic pattern I had seen years ago in Daniel's notes. A structure that favored misdirection over speed. My breath caught. They didn't disappear, I said. They adapted. Adrian's expression darkened. Who? He asked. I hesitated only a second. The people who funded Marcus, I said. But not the ones we saw. The ones behind them. The ones who never touched the money directly. The architects, Adrian said. Yes. The system unlocked suddenly, releasing the building from lockdown as smoothly as it had entered it. Conversations resumed hesitantly. Phones rang again. To the rest of the floor, it would seem like nothing more than a brief technical anomaly. To us, it was a declaration. They wanted to prove they still exist, Adrian said. And they wanted me to know they remember Daniel, I added. Adrian turned to me, his voice low. This ends now, he said. It won't, I replied honestly. Not completely. But we can make sure they never come this close again. How? He asked. I straightened. We stop playing defense, I said. We go where they don't expect us. The next 6 months were the most intense of my life. We dismantled networks not with force, but with exposure. We rerouted money streams, not to seize them, but to make them visible to the wrong people. Governments took notice. Regulators circled. Allies became liabilities overnight. We didn't strike the architects directly. We made them impossible to protect. One by one, their shields failed. I learned what it meant to operate at Adrian's level, not as an observer, but as an equal. I negotiated with men who had underestimated me and left them quietly unsettled. I made decisions that affected supply chains across continents. I learned when to apply pressure and when to let silence do the work. The past tried to reassert itself once more. A message slipped through one evening, encrypted and personal. Daniel didn't die for nothing. I stared at the words for a long time. Adrian watched me carefully. They want a reaction, he said. They won't get one, I replied. Because for the first time, Daniel's story was no longer just a tragedy. It was a catalyst. The final collapse came quietly, as these things always did. No headlines. No public reckoning. Just a sudden absence where influence had once been. The world adjusted. It always does. On the night it ended, Adrian and I returned to the balcony, the city stretching endlessly beneath us. The harbor lights reflected off the water, fractured and beautiful. I used to think survival meant staying ahead of danger, I said. And now? Adrian asked. Now I think it means choosing where you stand when danger arrives. He nodded. You stood, he said. You didn't run. I ran once, I replied. I don't need to anymore. He slipped his arm around me, steady and certain. Below us, Hong Kong breathed, alive and indifferent and endlessly complex. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the next threat. I was ready for it.